Good morning, everybody. I'm Lucy Beednell, the Director of Advocacy with the ARC of Northern Virginia. We are elated to have you all with us today and to be joined by our presenter, Gary Shulman, who's going to lead us in our Needs, Wishes, Wants, and Dreams session. Gary, we are so happy that you are here. Thank you for sharing kind of your career's worth of expertise with us, and I'm going to turn things over to you.
I appreciate that very much, and I am so thrilled, but I'm also so sad that I can't physically be with the parents. I would love to be able to see everybody and see your faces reacting. Now, I just wanted to ask Lucy, I don't see the actual PowerPoint on the bottom. Is there something that I need to do in order to start the PowerPoint?
Not at all. I'm going to bring it up right here.
Oh, excellent. Okay. I have to warn everybody, I am a technological dinosaur, so that, let me just make sure. Okay. So everybody sees the needs, wants, wishes, and dreams, and you see me with my glorious head that shows you that I've done a very dedicated job for many, many years trying to help parents, because this is what happens if you do it correctly. You take the anxiety and stress home with you. But as I said, a lot of you may not have any idea who I am, so I just want to give you a little background about myself. I have about 50 years of dedicated advocacy back in dear Brooklyn, New York, where I was born and raised, lived most of my life. Before I retired, which I thought would be permanently, to Palm Springs, California, where after 6 earthquakes and 120 degrees, after 2.5 years, I decided I needed to get back to the East Coast and get a little seasons under my belt. So again, I'm very sad that I'm not with you. I can't see your faces. I can't come over to you and put my hand on your shoulder when I see you reacting in a way to something that I've said or that some other parent has said. And that's what I really miss. But COVID has made us have to adapt, and there are no better adapters than parents of children with disabilities and the support professionals who work with them. So we're here today, we're adapting, so we're doing this virtual. And I know for some people who work, who have a life going on, this is actually more convenient. So I'm gonna have to learn to do my best with virtual meetings. Every once in a while, you're going to see me looking to my right. I'm not trying to be rude. I just have some notes because at this point, my 72-year-old brain needs some reminders. So that kind of makes it easier for me to work with you. So who am I? I was a Head Start teacher. I worked with children with and without disabilities for several years. I was a special needs museum instructor at the Brooklyn Children's Museum. And then for most of my career, I was a dedicated advocate helping parents of children of all ages, all disabilities, all backgrounds try to find and access programs and services. And now I am semi-retired in Arlington, but I couldn't retire from doing the advocacy work. So I offered my services up to ARC and some other agencies, and ARC was kind enough to allow me to interact with you. Now, today's workshop will be a complete failure if it's a one-way metro ride called the Gary Shulman train, and all I do is share my thoughts and my experiences. I need you to feel comfortable enough, and I hope you do, to chime in at any time during this presentation. If you have feedback, if you have a need, a want, if you have an experience that you feel will benefit some other parent and make their life a little bit better, if there's a professional and you want to chime in at any time during the presentation, please feel free to do that. Now, the other thing about virtual workshops, yesterday I was in a state of being panic stricken because exactly at 10 a.m., the gardeners were outside and they were doing their leaf blowing. So I said to myself, Lordy, please let that be a one-day job. So if you hear leaf blowers, if you hear airplanes, that's one of the detriments of having virtual workshops. We're all at home. So we're going to move on. And I'd like you to finish this statement, if you will. I think as a parent of a child with a disability, we've all needed some kindness in our life. I've needed some kindness in my life at times. A very, very famous gentleman long time ago said, be kinder than necessary. Can anybody finish that statement? Do we have any feedback? How would you finish that statement as a parent of a child, teenager, adult with a disability? If you're a professional working with these vulnerable families, is there anybody who can finish that statement for me? Be kinder than necessary. Why? Why should you be kinder than necessary? Anybody want to chime in?
And you can put answers in the chat or raise your hand and I can unmute you.
Please, yes, either way. And again, I'm a technological dinosaur. I'm so happy I have Lucy here helping me because this to me is very, very new. I'm a hands-on person. Now I'm just going to have to adapt my style. But if Lucy can help me, and if somebody wants to complete that statement, be kinder than necessary. Anybody want to help me with that? Because I don't want to just give it away. Now I see a number 1 on the bottom. Does that mean somebody is trying to chime in and help me out?
Oh, someone was saying that they don't think the chat is working,
Oh,
but yeah, you should be able to chat to Gary and myself. It should be set so, but if not, you can also put a comment in the Q&A. It works very, very similar.
okay. So before I kind of give away what the gentleman, and the gentleman's name, by the way, was Plato. He was a good friend of mine when I had hair. I used to know Mr. Plato. And now we're not talking about Play-Doh for the parents of the preschoolers. We're talking about Plato. He said, be kinder than necessary. Think about your lives. Think about caring for a child, for a teenager, for an adult with a disability, working with the families. Why should you be kinder than necessary? Any feedback? Anybody have any ideas? Anybody?
Ooh, we had a great one. Be
Let me
kinder
hear.
than necessary because you never know what someone may be going through, because you may not understand what's really going on, because we
love this.
usually don't know all the circumstances and things going on with others. Lots of great ones.
You know, some folks who are listening to this may have come from a background where you were taught, you know what, you don't hang your dirty laundry out there for everybody to see it. So that if something horrible is going on in your life, if you're going through stress, if you're going through tension, if you're going through turmoil, you walk around like this. You smile. How are you doing, Mrs. Jones? I'm doing fine. Do you need any help today? I mean, Bill, I know Billy can be a handful. He's got autism. He's got some behavioral issues. No, yeah, I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. So yeah, just because of what we see here, that doesn't necessarily reflect what's going on in here or in here. So be kinder than necessary. You don't really know what somebody is going through. Let me tell you what Mr. Plato actually said. He said, it's very similar to what you just gave me as feedback. He said, be kinder than necessary because everyone you meet is fighting some kind of battle. Now, I cannot see you right now. I can't see all the wonderful people who are participating, but do me a favor, just raise your hand if you're going through some kind of a battle in life.
Yeah, any of those Zoom reactions you can share. Oh, Carrie, we got some other good ones and other reminders. Be kinder than necessary because life is too short. You may be the only person, the only piece of Christ that someone sees, because one day you'll need kindness. Be kinder than necessary because criticism can destroy, but kindness can lift us up.
Oh, Lordy, since COVID, haven't we learned that what we thought was going to be tomorrow for each of us just isn't? How many people were going to retire and say, hey, now I'm going to go travel the world. Now I've got, and then COVID hit, but anything can hit. We can't predict. Nobody has that crystal ball that really can tell the future. So I think that these are wonderful responses. I'm wondering if somebody is brave enough, and maybe it's not brave, or just willing enough, and we have different personalities, and believe me, I understand that sitting out there is somebody who's shy, who doesn't want to participate. Maybe virtual makes it easier for you to participate, so that could be a benefit of virtual rather than sitting physically in a room. But can somebody share an experience recently or maybe in the history where you really needed kindness in your life because you got that diagnosis that now I have a child with this diagnosis of disability? Or it could have been later on in life. They finally found out that my young adult son has, and they give you that label, and you really needed kindness. Can anybody share an experience where somebody actually gave you that kindness and what that kindness was all about. So this has to come from you. What
That would be great.
happened?
And if you put it in the Q&A, I will certainly not read your name and that will not be recorded.
Exactly.
So it will be
Right.
anonymous.
We can be as anonymous and confidential as possible. We understand about that. But somebody share an experience where you really, really needed kindness at a particular time in your life, having to do with the disability of your family member. And you were actually shown that kindness. Anybody want to share some of that? Because I think it would help somebody else. Are we getting any feedback?
Not yet. I bet
Not-
folks, it's a story like that can take a second to type in. So we'll give
Okay.
people a minute and
I
you
can
can also unmute. And in the case on the recording, we would just hear your voice.
And if somebody wants to express it, it would make me feel so good to hear a voice. Human contact, don't we all need that? Lord, thank goodness for outdoor restaurants, huh? These last few years, so we had some human contact. But when you're caring for somebody with a disability, that human contact is so important, and that kindness.
Yeah, Gary, we've got some good hands raised.
Let me hear.
All right, so our first person, I'm going to turn on allow to talk. And so then that will enable you to unmute yourself and you'll see a prompt on your screen.
Okay. Now, do I have to do anything?
Nope, you're all
I'm
set.
good.
So we'll just
Okay.
wait for the person to unmute themselves.
Let me hear.
And if you just got a prompt on your screen saying you can unmute, it's a good time to do that.
Okay, you're talking to the person who's going to speak.
Here we go.
Okay.
Am I the one who's?
It's you, yes.
I hear a human. Hello,
Oh,
human.
okay.
Hi.
Well, my son is, he has an ASD and he also has some substance abuse problems.
I'm sorry.
And so of course, you have to be very careful about who you talk to about that.
Yes.
But I feel that there's mutual understanding with one of my friends who is very knowledgeable about autism and who said that it's not uncommon for people with ASD to have substance abuse problems.
Mhm.
So that made me feel much better, as though there was something going on that I could vaguely understand and that gave me a little bit of relief.
It sounds like, Anne, that you were feeling very alone,
Mhm.
and then you found somebody else who understood on a visceral level, on a deeper level, exactly what you were going through.
Mhm.
You know, please, if you feel that you're not getting the kinds of outside resources that might make life a little bit better for you, I know that one thing that you should have received from Lucy, who's been kind enough to email, I believe, everybody a resource listing. If that listing is not sufficient enough, if you're not finding what kinds of support services might make life a little bit easier, I say I'm retired. I'm not retired from life. I get great pleasure in trying to help families link with services and resources, as does an agency like ARC and other agencies you'll find on that resource listing. But please don't hesitate that if you feel you need more support for what you're going through, to contact me, to contact ARC, and we'll try to make life a little more supportive for you. Okay?
Absolutely. And I'll read another one while we give someone else a
Thank you.
chance to unmute.
Please
And that
do.
was, this is such a brave share. I needed kindness when I got diagnosed with a rare syndrome. I needed someone to understand me and where I was coming from. And that can be particularly hard with rare diagnosis, right? That people just can't place or put in their mental filing cabinets.
I'm so glad you talked about rare disorders. I hope you know about NORD, the National Organization of Rare Disorders, where even if you think there isn't another human being who has the type of disability that you have, there is and it's online. You can certainly link with them. You can look up support networks based on the label of that disability that they've given to you, as rare as it can be. I used to work with a child that I think there was something like 20 other children like this child, and the family was able to link with a network worldwide of other families who have a child with that particular rare syndrome. So National Organization for Rare Disorders, I hope you know about that. One of my obsessions is knowing everything I could possibly know. That's the other reason I'm bald. I think all the information has pushed my hair out. So what are you going to do? But it's my joy and pleasure to do the research if you're too overwhelmed in your life to do it yourself. But thank you for sharing that. Very often people don't fit neatly into little puzzle pieces, you know, where we are unique puzzle pieces and we just can't find where to plug ourselves. And there are rare conditions. And thank goodness there is an organization like NORD. So thank you for sharing that very much.
We've
Somebody
got,
else?
yeah, another person here who's ready to talk. If you just got a prompt on your screen, feel free to unmute.
Yes, hello. My son has a traumatic brain injury.
I'm sorry.
The kindness that was shown to me is he needed, he has many struggles, but one of them is feeding and in eating. And he really needed to have intense feeding therapy done. And the best place for him was like an hour to an hour and a half away from home. And it was going to be 6 hours every day for, 8 weeks. And it was COVID times, so there were not a lot of options for places to stay, like Ronald McDonald House or places like that. But my childhood best friend, without skipping a beat, opened her home to me. She lived like 20 minutes away, and took me, my son, and my other child in during that time, knowing how important that was for his, entire survival, really. And it was just such an enormous sacrifice on her and her family, but she did not even bat an eye at helping us during that time. So it was a tremendous kindness.
Oh, I'm so happy you have a friend like that. It's so important. You don't need a lot of friends in life. You need one or two friends like that. So I'm so glad that that came through for you. I hope that's the powers that be, whoever those powers that be, have told you that when somebody experiences a traumatic brain injury prior to the age of, I believe it's 21, they can qualify for services through the Developmental Disability Service Office, like Medicaid waiver, and there are other types of support services just for individuals with traumatic brain injury. When they become adults, there are various supportive housing programs and subsidies for people specifically with traumatic brain injury. So there's a whole network, which I hope you're tapped into. Support from people who understand what you're going through is so critically important. I know it's difficult to think about the future. Right now, you're dealing with the crises of the present. Glad you had that friend, but I'm a resource person. When I hear things, my brain starts percolating. So again, if we need to do a one-on-one, always feel free to contact me. But thank goodness you had that friend. And thank you so much for sharing that about your friend. Is there somebody else? Okay, we'll do a couple more and then we'll move on, because 2 hours is not a long time and there are all kinds of topics and we can always follow through personally after this. Go ahead.
Yeah, we had two more actually, folks who wrote in a little bit that are great.
Please.
And one was sharing that when her second son was born, the nurse at the hospital told Mama that God only gives us special children that he knows we can handle, and to take care of the blessings that go with them. So what a lovely thought and perspective to be shared with someone who's grappling with something very new and unexpected.
Okay. It's interesting. Some parents, because I've heard that before, some parents don't particularly like that statement. Other parents feel, isn't that warm? I think it has to do with your spirituality, with your beliefs. Some parents say, why me? This is what I've been given. Now I'll just deal with it. And Lord knows I don't have the tools. I desperately need help. I don't feel qualified. I wish I didn't. I wish tomorrow my child would wake up and that horrible word that they put on most kids called normal would be attached to my child. And others feel, okay, this is the child that I have been given. They wouldn't have given me this job unless I had the ability. But I understand the motivation of that nurse was to be kind. And we never disparage kindness. I just want to bring up the point that we come from different backgrounds. We come from different areas of spirituality, different religious backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds. So sometimes what is a blessing to be said to one parent can upset another parent. And I just want to acknowledge the diversity of the people out there who have children with disabilities, and we come from all kinds of backgrounds. But the motivation of that nurse was pure kindness, and that I applaud. And I'm glad that that was said. And I'm glad it made the person feel better.
All right, we've got one more here, and that was when my youngest son was diagnosed as being autistic at age 2 last year. It was a lot to handle. I had recently been diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. I was also serving as a caretaker for my mother who was on hospice. And the path to diagnosis was long, and I really had to advocate and push for my son. During the process to get him accepted into a county program, I met a wonderful autistic adult who was not only extremely kind, but made so much sense of what I was experiencing with my son. And that meant the world to me, as it was also new.
A positive role model. How many of us grew up feeling isolated, feeling unique, feeling as if nobody quite understood who we were? I mean, I did. Growing up in Brooklyn while other kids were playing baseball, I was playing my flutophone. Didn't quite fit in. But to have a role model with a similar label, and again, the label, what does the label mean? You know, when you say I have a child with autism, that could be completely a world of difference than the next parent whose child has the same label, but who they are as humans is so completely unique and different. But to find a positive adult role model who has been through it, who can be somebody that your child can perhaps have some relationship with and say, listen, this is who I am. I was given that same label. Look at me. I'm a success in life. I'm happy in life. It's so critically important. And I'm so glad that person was kind to you. And I hope that there's an ongoing relationship with that person, because it'll be so important as your child is growing and developing and going through various stages in life, because there are going to be hurdles. We all know that. So having a positive adult role model that can really relate is wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Should we do one more and then we can move on? Is that okay?
Yeah, this is our last one, actually, so it's
Okay.
perfect. So when my second son was born with Down syndrome, let's see, but when I was able to hold him before he went to get in the dome at the hospital, I fell right in love with him.
Oh,
That moment that took all the fear away.
that's so wonderful. You know, there's what you hear, you know, that's the problem with labels. They bring up misconceptions. They bring up stereotypes. And then when you meet the human, it's completely different. When you touch their cheek, when you see they have the same emotions, when you can love them as much. So I'm so glad that the love is there. Huge networks exist. I don't have to tell you, for parents who have children with Down syndrome. There's so many societies and organizations. So I'm really happy to hear about that experience. Now, I'm sorry if I'm frustrating some people who didn't get to share. I wish that this could go on all day. Maybe one day we do an all-day seminar, but I would like to move on. There are other things that I would like to share. I would like to share one Gary Shulman story about kindness, where I had a family that was lingering in the shelter system in New York City, which can be absolutely horrendous. Now imagine lingering in the shelter system with 4 children, each of them with a disability. 4 children, all different ages, all of them with a disability. And they finally, and it was right around Christmas time, right around the holidays, they finally got themselves an apartment, subsidized apartment, Section 8, New York City, hallelujah, not a penny to their name, no money to buy holiday gifts. They called me at Resources for Children with Special Needs, where I had worked for many, many years. And I thought to myself, boy, they finally got their own home. They have 4 children with disabilities. They need kindness. It's the holiday time. They're not asking for anything. I got to do something. And I knew that one of their children loved sports, loved hockey. So I contacted Madison Square Garden, which has a charity called Garden of Dreams. They linked the family with the New York Rangers. The whole family got picked up in a stretch limousine at their new home, drove them to the Madison Square Garden. They got to meet all the New York Rangers, and they thought that was the gift enough. But then they brought them into a room the size of my apartment, which isn't very big here in Boston, and the room was filled with holiday toys. And they were treated as if they were the most important people. There are kind people out there. You're gonna come across a lot of SLBs as well, who shouldn't be doing their jobs. They're doing it to collect a pension perhaps, and there are other people who are so kind and so dedicated, and their greatest payment in life is to show you that kindness, and hopefully they have the expertise to go along with the kindness. I've met a lot of kind people who don't know what they're doing, so I'm very happy to train them because kindness is the most important motivator for me. And I think that if I find a kind professional and they don't know what they're doing, I will train that person and I'll teach them how to get the resources for the families. But I'll never forget that story, how that parent was so delighted that holiday. So it's not going to be about me, so we're going to move on. I have another little statement, a little thing that I want you to complete. Let me see. There you go. This is a little proverb that was an old Mexican proverb. Think about the times in your lives. I know there have been times in your lives when the powers that be, whoever the powers that be are in your life, tried to bury you. But they didn't know something about you. They tried to bury you, but they didn't know that you were somebody fill in the last part of that proverb. They tried to bury me, but they didn't know that I was a what? Anybody want to give a completion to that proverb? This is an old Mexican proverb, and I think this pertains to every parent of a child with a disability and every professional listening out there who considers themselves to be somebody who is supportive to those parents. Somebody just give me either a phrase or a word that finishes that proverb. They tried to bury me, but what?
Oh, someone put in an answer, but they were a singer, which I love as an idea, something that would carry through the ground.
That they didn't know I was a singer?
Yeah.
A singer. Well, a singer can be mighty powerful when they're expressing themselves in song. I know I'm a singer. I love to sing. Used to drive people crazy at work, and wherever I go, I start singing from 8 o'clock in the morning till the end of the day. Makes me feel, in fact, I'm a poet also, and I wrote several of my poems have to do with how singing, one of them is called Singing Helps Me Breathe, because I also have asthma. And it's literal, but it also represents something more to me, that it really it elevates my spirit, gives me courage when I sing. So maybe they tried to bury me. They didn't know I was a singer. I got that kind of courage in me. Somebody else, any more feedback? Has to do with, they had a certain perception about these parents of kids with disabilities, and they thought they had the power. They're going to bury me, but they didn't know I was a what?
Oh, they didn't realize I was an insurance appeal maven. What a great answer for our community.
So watch out. I know the rules. I know the regulations. I've been around the block a few times. You don't want to mess with me. Well, I'm unless somebody is burning to give a response.
Oh, I've got survivor and angel too. What great answers.
Wait, say that one more time. I think I missed
a couple of people said survivor and someone said angel.
Angel, survivor, all wonderful, all appropriate. They tried to bury me, but they didn't realize I was a seed. And what happens to a seed when you bury it?
Yeah.
That big, strong tree with leaves. Thank goodness we're in my apartment. I look out of a window and I see these spring trees, and it gives me hope every single morning to see these trees. But they thought they were going to bury me. but they didn't know I was that strong oak. Don't mess with the parent of a child with a disability. They didn't know that I know my rights. I know my recourse. I know what the rules and regulations say. I know what I'm entitled to. You want to bury me? You don't know you're messing with a big, strong tree when it comes to my child. Anybody have, maybe again, we don't have that much time, but does anybody have a personal experience where you are in a situation where whoever the powers that be, it could be the Department of Education, it could be you applying for some type of a benefit or service for your child, the powers that be thought they were going to bury you, but they didn't realize you were a tree? Does anybody have an actual personal experience that you're willing to share about that?
And as before, you can, oh yeah, we got some folks raising hands.
Okay, let's do that.
All right. You may have just seen an ask to unmute prompt, so just click the unmute button and you can talk. Oh, I can hear that you're trying to speak, but the sound is not very clear.
Hello.
Hello, hi,
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Yes.
Can you hear? Hi.
Hi,
Oh, can you hear? Oh, you can hear me. Okay.
yes,
I was asking for a child from the New York City Department of Education,
mm-hmm,
and they told me I couldn't have it.
mm-hmm,
Actually, I was getting it, and they wanted to stop it.
oh my,
And they said they were stopping it immediately. And I went to an impartial hearing because I didn't think that was right.
mm-hmm.
And what happened,
Oh, I think the mic went off.
It looks like it did. Maybe not a great connection there. If someone else, I see some other hands raised, feel free to chime in.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry to that parent that happened. You know, if she can hear us, you know, we're very sorry, but your mic for some reason went off, so I am sorry about that. Yeah, is there somebody else?
We had some other hands. And then I'll give you a little prompt that you can unmute if you'd like. Okay, we got another hand going up. Feel free, go ahead and raise and speak up.
Am I the person who's supposed to be talking?
Yeah, go for it.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm the same person who spoke before, and my son is on the autism spectrum.
Right. Mhm.
And when he was in elementary school, one of the services that I asked for was speech and language. And there seemed to be an attitude that they didn't want to give him speech and language. And so anyway, when he went to a special needs high school, and the psychologist there said that she was surprised that the county wasn't participating to a greater extent, and that she thought maybe we should talk to this education lawyer. And we did, and it resulted in a very extensive test of his language abilities. He had dyslexia, among other things. And so it turned out that I think one of the documents might have been key, because when he was in elementary school, I got so frustrated that one of the documents I was supposed to sign, I wrote on it, "My son needs speech and language." But anyway, as it turned out, the county decided to pay the full tuition, the full high school tuition of my son in this special needs school. And I think one of the motivating factors was that they perhaps didn't want to admit that they had been wrong about the needs for speech and language of my son. So,
Well, clearly they did not bury you because you are a strong oak tree. And there's nothing scarier than a parent who knows about the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. IDEA. I mean, even when a parent walks in and says, "Oh, IDEA, my rights, my recourses, least restrictive environment, appropriate education," they start shaking in their drawers. "Oh, we can't mess with this one."
yeah.
So I'm glad that, and you know, it's interesting. You would hope that parents would be given as much respect as professionals, because they deserve to be given that. But we know in the real world, you walk in with an educational advocate, with a lawyer, and for some reason, their eyes light up a little more. But we all also know that the parent who walks in with the notebook and immediately starts writing names and taking notes and establishes the paper trail of what they're saying, what you're saying, and everything's on record, that's not a parent you're going to try to bury. That's a parent that has documentation. That's a parent that is going to be able to bring evidence to an impartial hearing. So I'm glad you had that successful experience where they did not bury you. Thank you. Do we want to share one more? Is there anyone else who wants to share about the times that the powers that be tried to bury them, but you did not allow yourself to get buried? Anyone else?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hello.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Gary.
Yes, it's good to hear from
Gary
you.
knows my story.
Yes.
But I tried literally for 5 years. Hold on. I couldn't get the other one to work, so I moved into this other laptop.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, I tried for 5 years to try and find the right education program for our son back in 2004, at a time when they didn't know about twice exceptional children. They were using a teaching model that it turned out was completely inappropriate for the way he learned. So without going into all the details, finally found a program called the Individualized Student Alternative Education Plan. But the only way we could access it was by him literally quitting school, going and enrolling in this other program. So they were not aware initially of this other program, but we knew our IEP meeting rights. We really believed this was the right program, and they kept hemming and hawing around, well, you have to wait till September when we have another IEP meeting. But from doing homework, doing a lot of it, I knew that a parent could call an IEP meeting anytime they wanted. So I said, well, you can call your meeting whenever you want, but he needs to start school in September in this program at the Arlington Career Center, where they offer audio technology. So I think they kind of realized, well, I guess maybe you're right. So he started, it ended up being the perfect program for him with hands-on learning. As a matter of all these other experiences, figured out that other students could benefit from hands-on project-based learning. And also because an attorney was working with us. And what we wanted to do is in violation, what they wanted to do was in section 504
Mhm.
Tab Act, they opened the program we were trying to get him into. So other students had access for this. So, we had a happy ending.
Yes.
On to become some kind of, well, he's an aerospace technical education. He's just using his hands and his abilities to be an aerospace technical technician when they wanted him to stay in school till he was 21,
Oh.
special ed program, where it would not work for him. So don't give up, do your homework. If you don't think that they think they know what they want best for your child, you can fight for something different.
And Paula, because I know you're very modest, but I would like to say that I just read Paula. And Paula, I don't know if people are seeing on the screen, it says Paula Cruikshank. I know that as an author, and she is an amazing author, Paula Lazur wrote a book called Beyond the Box, right? And I read it. I read it because not just that Paula happens to be a friend of mine, but it is a wonderful telling of a story where the powers that be try to bury an exceptionally gifted child who also happened to have certain labels. I'm not going to go into the details because I think that it's well worth the reading, Beyond the Box by Paul Lazur. But it's a success story about a parent who refused to allow her child to be buried. She refused to allow her family to be buried. And she now did something on an advocacy level where all of Arlington students who have giftedness as well as labels of disability can learn in a hands-on way where it's their talents and their skills and their abilities that are being emphasized, not the deficits. And guess what? All children benefit by hands-on learning. That's what her book is all about. So thank you for sharing your story. And I'll just say that your book was wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. It took me 2 days. I couldn't let go of it. So thank you. It's nice to hear success stories. Let me tell you one success story having to do with being buried. I had a family that, again, I don't know why they were in the shelters, but this was a family of an 18-year-old child with cerebral palsy back in New York. Imagine being in a shelter, period, to begin with, but having an 18-year-old in a wheelchair, profoundly involved with cerebral palsy in a shelter. They needed a wheelchair accessible apartment. So Gary Shulman, the advocate, hello, Department of Homeless Services, can you send me a listing of apartments that are wheelchair accessible for folks who are in the shelter system? What? You don't do that? You only send that to the social workers at the shelters? But I want to help the family. I said, I'm an advocate. Let me help the family. No, you don't do that. It's against your policy. I said, if you do it just one time, you'll be an angel. That's what I said. You'll be an angel. Then all of a sudden, the fax machine went on, and I'm looking, and out from the fax machine came a listing of all the wheelchair accessible apartments in New York City. So what I did was I wrote a letter to her supervisor saying, I need you to know you have an angel working for you. Now, this was a huge bureaucracy, the Department of Homeless Services. These are people who are being used to getting called every name under the sun. But I called her an angel to the person who was her supervisor, the person who paid her salary. This is a strategy, everybody, listen up. CC the supervisor, that's a big strategy. Don't you know, for the next year, without having to ask her, every month she would fax me a listing of updated available apartments that were wheelchair accessible in the city of New York. Unheard of, they never send that listing. They keep it confidential just for people who work in the shelters. So this was a family that was being buried by a bureaucracy, and the strategy was kindness, simple kindness, telling her she's an angel. Who does that to somebody who works in a bureaucracy? We all know how those folks are. They get so overwhelmed, so overburdened that they get burned out. But the important thing I did was I told her supervisor that he has an angel working for her. That was all she needed to provide me with something that helped. And by the way, the family wound up in a wheelchair accessible apartment because of that listing. Kindness, oh Lordy, be kinder than necessary. Everybody's fighting a battle. We're going to move on. Wait, am I terribly frustrating anybody out there who wants to tell one more story? I don't want to do that. Life frustrates you enough. Is it okay?
I
if we
wanted,
do?
actually, because it goes right along with a different strategy for contacting the supervisor. Someone shared that their son was a client of DARS, our state vocational rehab agency. And after kind of being denied services for years and years and years, for 8 years,
Oh,
Mama finally called the boss, who said immediately, yep, he qualified for services. She got him a job coach. And now 6 years later, he's still working there successfully with support.
I say bravo. But I also say, darn, that number of years to have to linger. Why? It's not appropriate. You know, why do parents who are frustrated and stressed enough, and individuals with disabilities are stressed enough, why do they have to linger for that number of years before you find somebody kind enough, knowledgeable enough, who has the power to do the right thing? Life shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be that hard if we all just were kind. I mean, that maybe if you, in case you're not getting it yet, that's the overall theme is the power of kindness. But also behind the power of kindness is that knowledge equals power. There are some professionals who don't have the knowledge about what the options are for the families. And sadly enough, or not so sadly enough, because it gives you the power, is that when sometimes we have to do the research for the professionals, we shouldn't have to. Can't tell you how many calls I used to get from new social workers. And my first question to them would be, did they give you the Bible of resources? And they say, what Bible of resources? I said, that's right. They're not going to do that. Every day you get your behind to work and you research what's out there for the families. Things change on a daily basis. Programs go out of business. People die. You don't want to refer somebody to a speech therapist who's no longer with us. You research every single day. That is part of your job. You need to, but that takes work. Yeah, that takes work. Nobody's going to hand it to you. Part of your job as a support professional is constant research. And if you discover something doesn't exist, be instrumental in creating that program, just like Paula did with programs for children who have a label of giftedness plus a label of disability. There weren't enough programs. She went ahead and motivated the systems, the powers that be, to create the programs. That's what we professionals should be doing. And if we can't do it, parents, you got to jump on it as well. Let's move on. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to give my little clicker here. Now I'm going to show you a picture. You decide which of these two cats is you. Any feedback? Has to do with stress. Well, is there anybody, how about let's do it this way. Right now in your life, having to do with a child, teen, adult with a disability, and if you're a professional working with the families, what is your primary cause of stress? And we have all kinds of stresses, so we won't talk about those other ones because we're here, we share a commonality. That's the person with the disability. That cat with the hair going all over the place, maybe when I had hair, I looked like that, I hope. The cat with the stressed look right now. I know some of you are feeling that right now. I don't want to make a joke out of it because for some of you, it's causing tremendous grief. If you're brave enough, willing enough, because sometimes if you are willing to share your stress, somebody else is going to say, oh, wow, somebody else is going through what I'm going through. Can we share some of the major stressors in your lives having to do with caring for somebody with a disability? Let's get some feedback. What are some of the stresses in your life having to do with your child with a disability? So let me leave that up to you to share.
Gary, we will give folks a second to type in some of those major stressors, but we had a participant ask what the name of Paula's book was again.
Paula, it's Beyond the Box, right? Beyond the
Well,
box.
actually, sorry, there's a long subtitle to it.
Go ahead. You're the expert. Tell them.
I should have said that because when we named this, I didn't realize at the time how many beyond the boxes there are out there.
Oh,
So what I guess I might be able to do, if you'd like, I could put in the chat line the name of it, the full name, if that would help.
That'd be great.
Okay, I will do that and do that while you're continuing your talk.
right. And I know that Beyond the Box, it is being sold by Amazon. I think you had told me.
It's on Kindle, but if you get on Kindle, it's one of those relationships where you have to go onto Amazon and then you'll find it.
Okay. And,
Oh,
and
sorry.
I have to reiterate, not written, technically written. You almost feel like there's a family sitting in your living room talking to you about their life experiences with concrete resources at the back of the book, some very concrete resources, which I plan to utilize and maybe add to some of my resource listings because they're so valuable. So yeah, I highly recommend that. But thank you for asking that. Paula, thank you for writing that. And I know other families are going to benefit from that. So
Yeah, it was intentionally written that way because I
thank you.
had to reach as many.
Yeah, very, very comfortable reading. Stress.
Yeah, so we've got a lot here. A big
Let me
stress
hear-
for me currently is dealing with those insanely long waiting lists. Occupational therapy, speech therapy, lots more.
What happened to, oh, did I just hit that by mistake? Look at that.
There, it was me.
Magic is happening. Okay. You know, I used to get parents who would call me angry. Gary, you told me to call that respite program and they told me that there's a waiting list. So I say to them, what did you do? And they'll say, well, I hung up. And I said, you didn't put your child's name on the waiting list? No, then you're never going to get the service. So there shouldn't be waiting lists, but that's reality. Put your child's name on the waiting list. And does anybody have a strategy once your child's name is on the waiting list because life is not fair? You can quote me. Gary Shulman said, life is not fair. Once your child's name is on the waiting list, do you think they always go from the top of the waiting list on down when they're looking to put a child in a program or give services? What can you do? And you're going to say, Gary, that sounds like cheating. That doesn't sound fair. Well, life is not fair. Guess what? What can you do so that a program falls in love with you, Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Jones, and maybe your child's name is on a waiting list, but they might actually give you some priority? Anybody have any ideas? You're probably going, really? Anybody have strategies? How can you have your child's name be given some priority, even though you think it's not fair? I know that life is not fair. How can your child be given some priority if your child is on one of these waiting lists?
At the Arc of Northern Virginia, we're big on reminding parents, you just call right on back. Just checking in. Wanted to let you know I'm happy to take a last minute appointment. If there's a cancellation, I can be there right away. We really do need it. You all are so helpful. We can't wait to hear from you.
Persistence, again and again and again and again. But because we're limited in time, I already see it's around 11 o'clock. I say to families, it is not possible. I understand. Don't throw anything at the computer. If you can, if the organization that provides you with the service happens to have a fundraiser, a special event, a party, they need volunteers. I had a parent whose child was on a waiting list for overnight respite services. Some of you are going, whoo, do I need that? Overnight respite services, long waiting list from United Cerebral Palsy in New York City. She would volunteer for every special event they would have. The whole staff fell in love with her. Don't you know, when an opening became available, no, her child's name was not number one, but guess who got that overnight respite? She did. Gary, that's not fair. Life's not fair. So one suggestion is, Do as much as you can for the organization so that when they hear your name, a little light goes off. Mrs. Johnson, oh, Mrs. Johnson, oh my goodness, she came and she helped out at the fundraiser and she made cupcakes for the child's party. And life's not fair. If you get them to think a certain way about who you are, you might be given preference. I know it shouldn't be that way, but again, life is not fair. Any other stressors? What's causing stress in your life? Let's share some of those.
All right. So this is something that I share for sure. Feels like as a parent, you're trying to find the right resources. You're spending a lot of time and money, but just not seeing those desired results or changes that can really help your kiddo.
How do we approach that? What are some suggestions so that if you are struggling in actually finding the appropriate resources, there's something I say to families. The most important thing that I tell families to do when they have a child with a specific type of diagnosis, a way that can help you most effectively tap into the appropriate resources. What do you think step one that Gary Shulman might recommend to a parent whose child was diagnosed with a certain disability and they're desperate for resources? What do I tell them to link with? We're kind of doing it right now. And if we did this on a regular basis, what would you call that?
Ooh, other parent support groups.
There's nothing more knowledgeable than a parent who's been through the mill. And you know what? We each have different talents and skills. There are some parents who are very knowledgeable at searching on the online. And there are other parents where this computer might as well be a monster. I don't know what to do with it, or I don't know the terminology. I love professionals who tell parents, just search for what you need online. Well, if you don't know the word respite, if you don't know the word transitional services, if you've never heard of the term IEP or IDEA, what are you searching for? So there are different levels of expertise and knowledge where you get a parent who has that skill sitting in a support group, or now a lot of things are virtual. If you can tap into some ongoing support networks of knowledgeable parents and professionals who join those groups sometimes as well, I think that can help. I love helping families search for support services. Even though I use the word retired, I don't get paid to do what I do. I get paid in my heart. I get paid in my soul. It makes me live longer. So come on, help me live longer. I want to live forever. So if you really are having problems finding something, and I'm hoping the resource listing that was sent to you is going to help with that. But if your need is fairly unique or not so unique, you just can't find it, I mean, I'll be happy to help free of charge. Do some research. So there'll be ways of you contacting me. I think, Lucy, because I'm old and I forget, the resource listing that we emailed them, I think it had my email on it, right?
They will also be getting the slides that have your
Okay.
email on the front.
All right. So you're going to have ways of contact. And believe me, if you go online, and Gary Shulman, I'm in 100 different places, but my website, which you can actually get my email there too, there was this strange website thing called Jimdo, Jimdo. So if you do Gary Shulman space Jimdo as one word, Jimdo, it takes you to my website. And there you can click on contact, Jimdo. Don't ask me why. When I started this many years ago, I said, I need my own website. And this was a free way of getting a website. So if you just in the search box, Gary Shulman, space Jimdo, Jimdo, it'll take you to my website, promise. And then you can hit contact, and that actually gets you right into my email as well. So different ways of contacting me. Any other stressors? I don't know what the right word is. Whoop,
Sometimes when I try and scroll in the chat, it scrolls the slides. So
Okay.
yes, as many as you can shake a stick at. So let's see, dividing time between children, husband, work, school, life, right? That's a huge one.
One thing that struck me in Paula's book and with thousands of other parents that I have worked with, when you have a child that's been given a label of disability, well, you may have some other, I love this term, neurotypically developing children as well. And they're the kinds of children who may or may not look at you like this. And inside their brain and inside their heart and inside their soul, they're going through turmoil. They're feeling that time is being taken away from them. Mommy and daddy's love is being poured onto this child who was given a label of autism spectrum disorder or Down syndrome or cerebral palsy or emotional disability or schizophrenia. Well, hell, I need time too. How do we not neglect? And then even if that child seems to be showing love and support and caring, sibling support groups, they didn't always exist. They exist, and even if it's virtual, there are things that only another sibling of someone with a disability can say to the brother and sister that you as the parent or you as the professional out there cannot say. They can speak from their heart, from their emotions. Don't you just want to wring his neck sometime because, oh, he's having one of those little tantrums again. I know what he's doing, just to get the attention. They don't understand the difference between a tantrum and a meltdown when you have a neurological issue going on. So they need to speak to somebody else. I highly, highly recommend sibling support groups. Go online. If you can't find them, I'll help you try to find them, but they're all over the place. Any other stress causing situations? I know
This is one I bet a lot of us can relate to, the uncertainty of the future. It's hard to plan.
I used to say to parents when I could physically see them in a room, raise your hand if you're going to live forever. Some parents would actually raise their hand. I want to find out what kind of juice they're taking because I would like that as well. But raise your hand if you're going to live forever. And the reality is the worst time to deal with a crisis like, oh, Lordy, I need some type of a group home or residential situation. The worst time to deal with that is in a state of a crisis. If you think you're not doing future care planning early enough, you might be too late. There are waiting lists. There are some services out there that just don't exist that should exist. There are financial planning because some services are not governmental entitlements, but there are games you can play so that somehow they might get funded. Well, you shouldn't be doing that research last minute. There are future care planning specialists. ARC, I'm sure, has workshops on future care planning, life care planning, residential versus group home versus things like guardianship. Well, do I become the guardian of my child at age 18 when he or she becomes an adult? Do I look for supported decision-making instead? And some of you are saying, what's that? By the way, sticks and stones can break my bones. Words can give me power. Somebody before mentioned 504. Some of you were sitting there going, what is a 504? 504, for example, and I hate, and I'm guilty sometimes myself, I'll use a term and I'm making an assumption. And you know, the odd couple, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, so we're not going to assume here. 504 is a federal law that says not every child has to be in special education. There are ways that if the program is getting federal money, a child can be given all kinds of reasonable accommodations without the label special ed. And 504 pertains to outside education as well. You might have an after-school program that gets federal money and they're refusing to take your child. You find out they get federal money. Not only are they covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act, but they're covered under this law called 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Knowledge, it's power. But we need to know what those words are, what those programs are. Back to stress. I don't want to, again, I have a tendency to talk. I don't want to do that. This is your show. What are some other stress causers?
This is a great one. Everyone says, take care of yourself so you can take care of others. But when you're trying to do so and you keep getting interrupted, it feels like your oxygen mask is getting ripped off.
Take care of yourself before you put your oxygen mask on your child. Right. You know what? This might be a good time for some people to share. What's your go-to stress reliever? Of course, I think it pertains to what you just said. somebody share, when you're at that stage where the oxygen is getting very low, what do you do to relieve stress? Caring for someone with a disability. What do you do? I'll just share my, I used to love Talenti ice cream, and then I got too heavy, so I stopped it. Watching Columbo on TV, I Love Lucy, and now that I'm in Arlington, nature walks. The Bluemont Trail is my favorite. I can't tell you how my blood pressure goes down. The other day I saw I think it's called a pileated or pileated woodpecker. I think my pressure went down 20 points. Nature is my go-to stress reliever. What are some of your go-to stress relievers? Let's share some of that. Are we getting responses? Because I can't tell.
Ooh, we've got some.
Yeah.
Start baking, which I thought was another one. Tea, mindless movies.
Excellent.
Videos of baby animals. Oh, that's a guilty pleasure of mine for sure.
Oh my God.
Singing.
Singing. I want to live forever. Ain't gonna happen. But singing, yeah. Now we do know there are some negative stress relievers. They do nothing but ultimately cause more stress. You know, like a little bit too much of this and some of that, and and we're all human. It happens, but ultimately those kinds of stress relievers just cause more stress. So let's do a few more causes of stress. What are some of the other causes of stress that some of the families want to share, or some of the professionals, please? We know you're out there as well, or persons with disabilities who might be participating.
Oh, this is one that's very acute these times, juggling work from home and all of these services coming in out of my house to try and support my child with autism.
So isn't that a double-edged sword? Some people are saying, Lordy, I wish I had all these services coming in and out of my house. Wouldn't that be wonderful? That's what I'm looking for. But by the same time, schedule. I remember an I Love Lucy episode where she's running around going, schedule, schedule, schedule. Well, Lord, the speech therapist is coming, but in 10 minutes, the PT is coming, and then the OT is following that. And then, how do I juggle it? I wish I had an answer to that. Inside my brain, it's one of my issues. I think that sometimes I present as being very well organized, but some of my own disabilities, and I grew up as a child with tics like Tourette's and anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, which I have to this day. And there's an internal chaos that I'm always dealing with, and I have to develop strategies to deal with the internal chaos. And I think if I were a parent, having to juggle a schedule, that would be a constant source of stress. I don't have an answer for that. If there's another parent who wants to give feedback about how do you deal with the stress created by all of these programs and services now coming into the home, and you have another life on top of that. So any feedback at all about how do you deal with issues of your schedule? Has anybody learned a strategy to make that easier for anyone?
We had a good commiserating comment that in and of itself is a full-time job, just juggling the logistics and all the appointments, for sure.
I can say this, and I've learned this from parents of children with autism, and that's a social storyboard that may be in your home. If you have the need to set up a very detailed schedule, put it in a concrete written form where you can see it all the time, as opposed to thinking you're going to have it on your computer, you're going to have it in your palm pile, you're going to maybe physically having it in front of you. It may help calm the senses. It would for me. I think if I saw the schedule all the time, it would help me organize. I don't have to remember what's coming next. It's right there on my kitchen, next to my refrigerator. So maybe that's but parents of children with autism who tell me about all these social stories, and in the bathroom, they have a social story right there next to the mirror about how to wash your hands, how to go to the bathroom, how to take a shower. Some of us are thinking, really? Yeah, for some of our children, I don't have to tell you, that's needed. Maybe for some of the parents, that's needed also. Maybe that would be a accommodative factor. But just a couple of more stressors, things that cause stress before we move on? Because it's already 11:15 and there are some other
Yeah,
things.
this is a great one that hasn't been covered, and we've got a parent here sharing about their adult son who has a number of disabilities and is working with state services.
Okay.
It seems like the job supports and counselors he's supposed to get keep changing. Every time a new one comes in, they ask the same questions already, all over again, right? They're not listening to him. They're blaming him for not being able to find a job, but it's their job to help him find a job. And so he's getting stressed and nervous just trying to use the services he's being offered. As a parent, is there anything worse than watching your child be demeaned?
Tell me, please, because you know the answer. What's the reason why we have such a turnover of these human beings who are the support professionals for your families? Why is there a constant turnover?
If you asked me, I'd say it's a number of things. I mean, folks are not paid well and not trained well, and turnover drives turnover, right? So if we've got a team that's supposed to be 30 people and we've got 5 who resign, the people who are there are stressed, and then they're stressed when they're trying to train new colleagues, so they resign. And so this drives more turnover.
There is a major, massive need to improve the salaries of people who are support professionals, who in some instances are helping somebody in such a profound way that they should be paid as much as a football player who throws a ball and runs over a line and goes like this. Yeah, I know that's never going to happen, but they have to be able to pay their rent. And it's also a kind of a job where there could be a lot of burnout if they're not given support from their own organizations, if they themselves are not joining support groups. You know, I don't have to tell you, sometimes your family members are not the easiest people to deal with. Sometimes the parents aren't the easiest people to deal with. Don't throw anything at your computer, but you know that, and I know the reason behind that. So it is a kind of a job where emotionally there is a high burnout rate emotionally, but a lot of these folks have their own families. And the kinds of rents, if they happen to live in the Arlington area, the kinds of rents that they have to pay in this area are astronomical. So there is an advocacy need where even parents can get together and really talk to the powers that be at the legislative level, really have to increase. Those professionals who are in it for the right reason, because they love doing what they're doing. My whole life, I never was paid a lot of money, ever. As a Head Start teacher, as a special needs coordinator for a children's museum, as a lifelong advocate for parents, I don't get paid a lot. I never did. It paid me in my heart. Not a lot of people are willing to say, okay, that's enough. Of course, they happen to have a child or 2 children, or they're paying alimony or whatever else they're paying. So there's a major need for advocacy to get these people more money. But the stress of turnover, you and I know that one of the things that's critical for the functioning of your children is consistency in their lives. They can't deal with these transitions. They just get used to that respite worker, that job coach, and then boom, they're out the door. You have somebody new, and yeah, we got to reorient them. Again, I think one answer is that make it enticing enough for these people that they want to stay, and try to get the right people, maybe at the college level, to really make this an enticing program to go into, because of how worthwhile it is. But I don't have all the answers. It's frustrating, and absolutely it would make me look like that cat on the right side with the hair sticking all out. Any other stressors before we move on? Any other stressors?
We're probably okay to move on, but some parents put some great tips in the chat related to
Let's
people
hear.
navigating
Let's
waiting
hear.
lists for services. Some of those were call your pediatrician, see if they can call the specialist and expedite things. Maybe they have a relationship. And as you mentioned, kind of calling often and kindly, or offering to volunteer, or otherwise getting involved with the organization, right? You're never out of options.
Now, I don't know if you hear, it sounds like there's a military jet going up, so I hope you can still hear me. It's all about perception of power. I am not all that powerful a person, But back in New York, I was a very well-known advocate who did a lot of free workshops, who got the job done when it needed to get done. So people had a certain association with the name Gary Shulman and my competency in doing things. So I would always say to a parent, let them know you know me. Really? I said, yes, say Gary Shulman referred you. Now in Arlington, they're gonna go, huh, who's he? Though they might not, because I have a pretty well-known Facebook group called Arlington Through the Eyes of a Newbie, N-E-W-B-I-E, by the way. If you want to celebrate Arlington, if you look at Arlington Through the Eyes of a Newbie on Facebook, that's all we do is we take photographs of beautiful Arlington and we celebrate living here. So just want to put that in. But yeah, a pediatrician who they might say, oh, that's a pretty knowledgeable person. Maybe we'll give this person some exceptional care. Shouldn't be the way it's done. It's not fair, but it's reality. Use a person's name who they perceive to be in some position of power, and maybe that can help push things along. We're going to move along now because I want to make sure I get to everything. Again, I am going to thank all of you for chiming in, and I am not scolding those people who are not chiming in because we have different personalities. Some people don't like to air their particular issues in a forum like this, but I know they're participating. And I know something's happening here, and I know something's happening in here. And we can follow up if we need to. So I'm going to move on. A little something about stress. For 5 points, boys and girls, I'm going back to my Head Start roots. What animal are we looking at? Anybody quickly tell me what animal that is? It's not a chicken. I can tell you that. Could be
Oysters, yeah.
It's an oyster. Now, I'm going to tell you a very quick story, and then you're going to go, oh, Gary Shulman, you're full of it. But no, you have to just be willing to listen to me. The oyster is an animal that lives on the bottom of the ocean. You're looking at a dead oyster because when the oyster was alive, it's a bivalve that has 2 shells, sitting at the bottom of the ocean, opening up the shell, eating. Sometimes when it opens its shell, it creates a suction. What's lying at the bottom of the ocean? I'm going to answer my own question because I know you all know it. There's sand at the bottom of the ocean. So sometimes when the oyster opens up both shells, a little piece of sand gets caught in the soft body, and that creates discomfort. As you have discomfort in your life, it causes stress. The oyster is now stressed out. Well, look at what the oyster does with stress. It takes its own body, creates a liquid, a fluid from its own body that surrounds the piece of sand. And it keeps doing that, And that liquid gets thicker and then hardens so that now it has a soft round edge. There's no longer discomfort. There's no longer pain. From a source of stress can come beauty. From that sand, which was causing stress, that's how we get pearls. Now, did you all know that's how we get pearls? Anybody out there not know that? Some of you were going, I didn't know that. Some of you are going, I know that's old hat. Now, some of you are thinking, okay, so what does that have to do with me? You're telling me that having a child with multiple disabilities, who's waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning every day, who's abusing me physically because now he's old enough to do that, that's beautiful? That's not beautiful yet. My point is that from stress can come beauty if you're given the support services that you need. Now, we've already talked about the fact that it's not so easy to be given the support services. But let's talk about support services for a second, because to me, if your life is given the respite, if your life is given the case manager who knows what he, she, or they are doing, if your life is presented with the residential transition option, if your life is given the appropriate school program, the support group, financial assistance, you have time to breathe and realize you're a human and there are other things in your life. Let's talk about some support services. Some of the support. We're going to play a little game. The name of the game is What Do You Know? We're going to do it kind of quickly because I want to get to other things. But what do you know? Let's see if you know this. You don't have to write it down. If you know it, I want you to chime in. I am thinking of an organization that loves your children just because they have a disability and might be willing to give your family financial assistance to pay for equipment, to pay for camp, to bring you a vacuum cleaner, as one of them did for one of my families who had bed bugs and had to vacuum her rug, but she didn't have a vacuum cleaner. And their name means brotherly in Latin. Brotherly in Latin. What's the name of the fraternal organizations? We have them all over Arlington, all over any other community. And all you got to do is, hello, my name is Mrs. Johnson. I have a 7-year-old child with a developmental disability. Can you see it in your heart to help me out? I'm having a crisis. What are the organizations that I'm thinking of that mean brotherly in Latin? Who has an answer? Deep, 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 deep. Is it behind door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3? Anybody know? Who loves your children? That means brotherly in Latin. Are we getting any response?
Nothing yet.
Really?
We're not brushed up on our Latin.
I'm telling you, okay, when I say it, you're going to go, oh, yeah. Has anybody out there ever utilized the services of fraternal organizations? That's what fraternal means, brotherly in Latin. Anybody use those services? Can't believe it. All right, let's do it this way. Name a fraternal organization that's active in Arlington. Who has the name of one?
See, the Knights of Columbus has a big presence in Arlington.
Knights
for
of
sure.
Columbus, Knights of Pythias, Lions Clubs, Kiwanis Clubs, Elks Clubs, Optimists, Rotary Clubs. Gary, how do I find these people? Google Fraternal Organizations Arlington, Fraternal Organizations Clarendon, Fraternal Organizations Bluma. Try to get the one closest to where you live. That's the strategy. I use them all the time. I recently had one, they were going to do a fundraiser for a family whose child had multiple disabilities in the hospital, extensive medical bills. They love your children. Are they going to help you 100%? No, they may not help at all, but you know what? You got to be in it to win it. Here's the line that I use. It's not copyrighted. Can you see it in your heart to help me? Ooh. Can you see it in your heart? Let me see. I'm going to bring this up at our next meeting and we'll see if we can do a fundraiser. These are beautiful people. These are not bureaucrats. These are good old guys and gals who get together on a regular basis. They do everything out of kindness because that's what humans were supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be kind. Let's move on to another resource. Who knows the name of the special bank account for your family member with a disability where you could put $7,000 into that account every year? It can get up to about $100,000 and it will not take away things like SSI or Medicaid from your family member.
Ooh, we had a quick answer about ABLE accounts.
The ABLE account, I guarantee there are people listening right now who have no idea what we're talking about. Go online, ABLE account, Arlington, it'll tell you how to sign up. What's the benefit? The benefit is, number one, your family member will feel wonderful about having a bank account. It will not take away those necessary benefits like SSI, even up to $100,000. You can tap into the money as long as you're using the money to benefit the person who has the disability. It has to be opened up in the name of the person with a disability, even if they're a child. Auntie May, your wonderful aunt who loves your child, wants to give a holiday gift, tell them, put money into the ABLE account. You'll be helping my child. So there is a special bank account just for persons with disabilities. I'm going to just share a few treasures now to let you know there are thousands of resources that aren't readily known. To some, yes, never assume that the other parents in your support group know these resources. Share. Gary, if I share these resources, maybe I won't be able to get it because they're going to jump on it. There won't be any room for me. Don't be like that. Be kinder than necessary. That's what it's all about. Next one. If a parent dies, if it's going to happen, newsflash, if a parent dies or retires or collects Social Security or goes on disability, your adult child with a disability can change from SSI to something that might give them even more money. They can change from SSI to what? Does anybody know? If a parent dies, retires, collects Social Security, or goes on disability, your adult child with the disability who had SSI can get something that's even more money. What can they get? Anybody know?
Lots of savvy, quick answers. SSDI, that
You got
other
it.
program.
Social Security Disability Insurance. And after 24 months having SSDI, even if you're 30 years of age, after 24 months on SSDI, what health insurance can you get that normally only old people can get?
Oh, Medicare. Yes, people are not letting grass grow under their feet.
Already. I'm going to move quickly. True or false? A parent can make $200,000 a year, and depending upon the disability of the child, that child with a disability can get Medicaid. Is that true or false?
True. Yes, good quick answers.
Okay, not everybody has heard of this thing called Medicaid waiver. If this is news to you, you need to contact places like ARC or Gary Shulman or many of the others. There is a possibility of waiving parental income. And it's not just Medicaid, it's super Medicaid, because it pays for a lot of things like respite and habilitation, which is help in the home. And they could actually give you a budget. There's something called self-direction where through the Medicaid waiver program, you're given your own budget and you help decide how to use that money for your child, even if you're making $200,000 a year. Oh my goodness, some people are sitting up there going, oh, my brain is spinning this too much. Okay, I won't tease you too much today. A child with a disability might be able to get in school all kinds of accommodations without the label of special ed under this program. I mentioned it earlier. Who remembers it? You don't have to have a label of special ed, but you could be given accommodations under what federal program?
504.
504, 10 points for that person. I come and clean your windows. Next, what's the alternative to legal guardianship when your child hits 18 if you don't really want to go through that legal process? Beep, beep. Where your adult child with a disability has a lot more of the decision-making power without you, the parent, or somebody else becoming the legal guardian. Anybody know?
Yeah, powers of attorney is an option, is a tool under supported decision-making, which is something we talk about a ton.
Supported decision-making. Many workshops exist on supported decision-making. Okay, after what age is the school system no longer mandated to give your child a single program or service? After what age?
We've got 21, 21, 21, 21 coming in.
We got correct. Okay, almost finished. True or false? If a person is receiving SSI and they get a job, the SSI necessarily will be taken away. Is that true or false?
No, lots of falses and nos. Good job, guys.
Good, that's right. There are many federal incentive programs to try to encourage an adult with a disability to go to work while keeping their benefits. If you don't know about that, we can educate you on that. Last one. You bring your child to an after-school program. They find out your child has a disability. They tell you, we do not have to take your child. Go find your child a special program. Are they allowed to do that? They say, don't let the door hit you behind on the way out. Are they allowed to do that?
All right, we've got no, 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 false, false, and no.
Watch my head.
Mm.
Now, wait, don't throw anything at me yet. Woo. We need to be very clear about who and who is not covered under various laws. I had a parent, she brought her child to an after-school program. They told her that very thing. Her child had attention deficit disorder, some learning disabilities. And she thought she was doing them a favor. And by the way, my child does have an IEP, might need some time away, can't sit for store. Oh, well, we don't have to make those accommodations. Goodbye. What kind of a program were they that they were legally, even though morally, ethically, they shouldn't have said that. Legally, they were able to say that. What do you think their affiliation was?
Maybe religious groups, sometimes exempted from the ADA.
Religiously affiliated organizations are exempted from the Americans with Disabilities Act. However, what do some religious organizations get from the federal government? They go who?
They can get money.
They get some federal funding. They're still not covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act if they're a religion. But what other federal law that's even older are they covered under so that you can really take them to task by not taking your child and maybe get their federal money taken away from them? What's the other law that's even older than the Americans with Disabilities Act that says if you are getting, I don't care if you're religious or not, you're getting some federal money, we don't have to give it to you if you decide to be discriminatory against people with disabilities. Anybody know that law?
Yeah, we're circling back. And as a hint, I'll say this was an answer to a previous question as well. It's a very wide, sweeping piece of legislation.
Oh my goodness, that's the reason that Lucy has been hired. Anybody know? Okay.
Yeah, laws about non-discrimination. It's a number.
It's the 504 again, it's the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Section 504. If they're getting that federal money, then they can be considered a public accommodation because they're getting the federal money and they can have the federal money withdrawn. There's so much more to know. Please, I'm begging you, when you talk to other parents, never assume they know what you know. And they might know more than you know. Ask questions. It's by sharing resources that life and stress can be ameliorated, can be lessened in our lives. Always share. You know how it feels to care for somebody with a disability. Now, let's move on to some good stuff. Tell me something good. Who believes? Now I feel like a preacher. Who believes? Behind every child with a label, an adult, behind every person with a label of disability is a person. I'm changing it, right? With ability. Raise your hand if you believe. You all believe? Okay, everybody's raising their hand. Give me an example right now where you're either your own child or somebody you're working with. They've been given a label, but they have a tremendous ability. Or even not a tremendous, doesn't it be tremendous? It could just be an ability or a talent or a skill that maybe not everybody realized, and then you've discovered it. Give me some examples, and I'm going to give you a concrete example of that. Can somebody give me an example? Think of your own child. And if you can't think of an ability, you really do need to link with a support group because it's there. I'm going to assume you're thinking. Anybody want to share an ability, a talent, a skill of your child who has a label of disability? Are we getting feedback?
We'll give people another second. I know it takes a
Okay.
minute. Oh, with someone who's got a child who's great at math and organization, which are critical
Oh.
life skills.
That's fantastic. Is that wonderful person who's sharing that also willing to give the label that the powers that be gave to the child, the label of disability? What was the, again, we're confidential, so, but what was the label of disability that was given to that child?
Autism and anxiety.
Okay. It's going to be a future accountant, maybe work for the federal government, get a good pension, deal with numbers. Any other talents, skills, abilities that you can share with us?
Yeah, an adult with autism who's a successful Elvis tribute artist.
Really?
That's a fun one.
Well, I'm wondering if that person's got a gig in Las Vegas. Elvis has left the house. That is fantastic. Any other talents, skills, abilities that we can think of? Because then I'm going to share a specific story about a talent. Any others? Share one more, then I'm going to share mine. Anybody else? I'm going to be very sad if we have parents out there who can't think of abilities and talents and skills of their
Oh,
children.
there are lots. All right. My oldest is autistic and loves art and gives you a story from that art in space. Oh, a child who's a comedian who has autism. That's another really fun one.
And a comedian, you know that they're actually, I've seen courses like stand-up comedian courses for children that sometimes are throughout the community centers and continuing education programs. One more, then I'm going to share my story. What's one more talent or skill?
Got an autistic poet.
I'm a published poet. I love the child already. You know what? That would be wonderful. That's a wonderful way of communication. Sometimes folks on the spectrum have difficulty communicating, yet they can communicate through music, through poetry, through dance, through movement. So wonderful. Let me tell my story again, because time is fleeting. Time, you're my enemy in many ways. I knew a family that I used to work with. They had a daughter who was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, severe bipolar, and we can know if bipolar disorder is left untreated, that can lead to suicidal ideation. That absolutely happened. There were several attempts. They actually moved from a high rise to a lower floor because they were afraid that she would attempt suicide. Learning disability, severe emotional disability, all kinds of labels placed on her. And you could well imagine that her self-concept was kind of in the toilet. Because of these disabilities, she only saw herself as the label that society placed on her. So I was talking with her. She became my friend. Her mom brought her into work one day, and she was staring at me. And I know I have a very handsome face and very small ears, and she's looking at me, and she's looking at this. And I noticed that she's going like this. So you could imagine what she's doing, right? She's looking at this face, and she's doing something. I said, "What are you doing, Erica?" "Oh, nothing. I like to draw sometimes." "Oh, you like to, are you good?" "No, I'm not so good." So I'm going to show you at the end of our session what she drew. The child who, because of the labels placed upon her that were all in her mind negative and talked about disability, she couldn't possibly see herself as being talented. This is what she drew. That's the actual picture. When I had more hair, quite a number of years ago. I entered her picture in an art contest for young people. They displayed it online on their website. Her self-concept started to fly. We put her in an art program with a scholarship. Now, some of you think there's a clown over there. This is a story in and of itself. Mrs. Shrek, you know, like Shrek, the cartoon, her name actually was Mrs. Shrek, had two children with profound developmental disabilities. They were both microcephalic. They were born with very small skulls, small brain, functioning in the profound range of developmental disability. And I always managed to make her laugh. So one day in the mail, special delivery, came a needlepoint of a clown. And I looked and there was a little message from Mrs. Schreck. Because you always made me laugh. So she needle pointed me this clown. Now this is an overwhelmed parent. Two adult children with profound developmental disability live at home. This was her thank you. Now here's the funny part. There was a button on the back of this clown, which I never really noticed. And I was dusting it. You know, I don't dust very often, so you can imagine. After a couple of years of dusting this clown, there was a needle point, and I pushed the button and it started to sing, "Send in the clowns." She took that time. Those of us who are in this position of helping parents for the right reason, we don't need to get a lot of money. We're paid through these experiences every time. Because I know as overwhelmed as she was, she went ahead and she made that needlepoint. And then she went ahead and found a music box. And she attached the part of it that plays the music to the back of this. There's no greater payment to an advocate's mind, heart, and soul than something like this. Now, 5 points. Looking at this picture, Erica today is probably 40 years old. What do you think, Erica? See, that this gives hope. Erica is a self-sufficient, functioning adult. What do you think she's doing these days so that she can support herself, live independently in an apartment? What do you think she's doing? Let's take some guesses looking at this. What do you think she's doing? What do you think?
Drawing,
Say again?
drawing,
Okay, drawing. Okay. Anything else based upon this that a career she might have gone into?
teaching art, making sketches.
Teaching art, making sketches. Okay. I'm not going to dangle you too long. She
Being a
is-
clown. Oh, that's another fun answer.
Maybe she was inspired by that clown picture. By the way, you know, as I was telling that story, yeah, there were tears. And I always said, the day that stops happening, that's the day I really retire. The good professional supports you in here. I can never say to you, I know what you go through. I don't have a child with a disability. But the dedicated professional feels you in here, in their hearts and in their souls. So don't be embarrassed if the tears are dripping down. I'm an old man. I'm allowed to do whatever I want. So if I want to cry because I'm feeling good and I'm feeling memories that really made me feel good, I want you all to rejoice in that. Don't feel uncomfortable when this old fart is crying, because that's a good thing. That means I did some good stuff in my life. And at the end of your lives, I want you to be able to say the same thing and cry happy tears. That's all I wish for you. Guess what? And if Paula is still out there, my friend Paula, she's going to relate to this. Erica is a master auto mechanic. What happened? She was put into a vocational program for some reason, and she doesn't even know the reason. It was fixing cars. They just said, okay, it's a class. We offer that class. She said, okay, what the hey, I like motorcycles, I'll try it. She discovered she has a passion for fixing cars. She excelled to the point where today she's fixing and driving these monster trucks from companies, making more money than I would ever see in my lifetime. She knows the intricacies about what goes where, happy as can be as a self-sustaining adult who is a master auto mechanic because she got into a hands-on preparatory program from some counselor who might have seen the fact that she had incredible fine motor dexterity, which you also need to be an artist like that. That's what she's doing today. I love these stories. Reminds me of my youth. Next, who can relate to this? How others see you is not important. How you see yourself, how you see yourself means everything. Self-concept enhancement for somebody with a disability. How are you doing that? How are you helping your child to have a positive self-concept, considering all of the negative feedback that's going to come their way and that comes your way as a family? How do you specifically give us some feedback? How are you improving your child's self-concept? What are you doing for your child to make sure that that self-concept is being fed? What are you doing? Let's hear. Getting anything?
Not yet. We'll give people another minute.
How do you make your child on a daily basis, considering all of the odds that are against them, feel good about themselves? Maybe we'll put it that way. How do you make them feel good about who exactly they are? What are you doing? What's something you're doing as a parent? Or as a professional? Or as a person with a disability listening, what are you doing for yourself so that you can feel, look in that mirror, and you might be sitting in a wheelchair now, and you might be elderly, but you're seeing that ballerina. What are you doing?
I'll let people type in. I will say for my kiddo, every night at bedtime, we give some very specific examples of ways that he grew or helped our family that day. Not, you did a great job today. When you held your brother's hand and walked him across the street really patiently, that showed me that you were so loving and kind. And I could see that made him smile too, that kind of specificity.
So you don't assume that your child knows that information, that when your child held the sibling's hand, how kind that was, how important that was, what that said about. So just pointing those little things out, only because it's getting to be almost 5 to 12 and everybody has a life to lead. I'll just say this, please, when you discover the ability, the talent, the skill, the passion, feed it. Everything doesn't have to come from school. You know that, I know that. We've got after school programs. We have summer programs. We have mentors. We have other ways of feeding the passion. If the school system is not knowledgeable about your child's talents or skills or passions, you need to be the one to inform it. Do you know that my child loves to stand up in front of the TV and give speeches? I didn't know that. Where does that come from? You know what? Let's put him on the debating club. Your child loves to do sketching. Let's put him in a special art program. Feed the talent, feed the skill, feed the passion. Quick word about mental health. It's a strength. Please don't be this goat. Don't stand at the precipice. And don't think that it is a weakness to ask for help. It is a strength. In the resource listing sent to you, there are many programs and services that can help with mental health crises. Arlington, and this is going to be in the PowerPoint, you're going to get it. There is a crisis number. I hope you never have to use it. But I hope that if you have to use it, you'll have the courage and you'll have the ability to use it and understand and interpret this as being an absolute strength to reach out. How many people have not reached out, and we know what that consequence is? We don't want you to get to that point. Please reach out for help. A quick story. The crackpot. Some people might think your child is a crackpot. Well, there was a story. Many years ago, there was a water carrier. He lived in a village that wasn't very rich, but there was one rich person in that village that had a palace up there on the hill. And this poor person had the job of bringing the water down from the river to that palace. And the water carrier had two pots. One was formed when it was born, perfectly round. Everybody looked and said, oh, what a gorgeous, beautiful, perfect pot that is. The other pot was born with a disability. The other pot was born with a crack, went right down the side. Now, you and I both know that if you're going to carry water in a cracked pot, the water is going to drip out. Well, one day, the water carrier, he heard crying. And he looked back, And the crackpot with the disability was crying. And he said, well, why are you crying? And the crackpot said, I'm so ashamed. I'm so embarrassed. I cannot do my job as well as that other perfectly formed pot. He was born so beautiful. Look at me. I was born with a crack. And the water carrier said, stop. Stop crying. Take the time to look at the ground where I carried you all these months. And the crackpot looked down, and only on his side of the road were growing beautiful flowers like we're seeing in Arlington right now. You see, the crackpot saw the crack as a disability, but it was a skill. It was an ability. Because of that imperfection, it dripped water and it fed the seeds and it grew flowers and it made this world a more beautiful place. We're all crackpots. You're a crackpot. I'm a crackpot. What does it mean to be perfect? What does it mean to be normal? Raise your hand if you're normal. I hope nobody's raising their hand. There's no such thing. We're all different. We all have our skills, our talents, our abilities. We are all imperfect. In fact, if you look long enough, everybody seems normal until you get to know them. And then you find that crack, that imperfection, the thing that makes everybody unique, including your children. One final thing to share about disability versus ability. You know, Albert Einstein had a profound disability. Albert Einstein had profound learning disability. Couldn't read till he was about 9 or 10 years of age. Attention deficit. If you look at pictures of him, the hair is all over the place. Chaos going on in his brain, but he was an absolute mathematical physicist genius. Stephen Wilshire, young adult, profound autism, does not speak this way, speaks this way. They fly him in a helicopter on a regular basis over a city. He memorizes the whole city. They sit him down in front of paper. He draws the whole city. His family has been living off of the money that he's been making selling his artwork throughout the world, and he loves it. And this enhances his self-concept. Behind every label of disability, there is somebody who has an ability, who has a talent, who has a skill. Nobody can pretend to tell you what the future is for your children, for your family member with a disability. So what you got to do is you got to dream big. Think about what your dreams are. Think about what the next step is to fulfill those dreams. And if you need help fulfilling those dreams, there are plenty of people like me, like ARC, that you can call on. And there are other parents who know how you're feeling. So contact them and get yourself some support. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm going to assume there's been sharing going on, percolating going on in your brains. And I do not underestimate what it means that you took 2 hours out of your valuable lives that very often are chaotic or filled with stress. You gave me 2 hours of your life, and I thank you for that. That's it for today.
Thank you so much, Gary, for being with us. I personally am feeling much more peaceful and grounded and hopeful after our time together. I wanted to thank everyone who came with us today, and we will certainly put the recording on the Arc of Northern Virginia's YouTube channel. And as a reminder, there are many other videos and resources there. Please feel free to reach out to myself, and you'll have Gary's contact information also in the follow-up email you'll get from me. We are here to help. You are never alone. As I tell my kids every day, there's always another way. You need to get something done. We'll just keep working it until we find whatever that way is. Thank you all so much for being with us. Bye-bye.